and welcome to my channel. This is Crime Corner with Kayla, me! I hope you've all had a fantastic week so far. My week has literally just begun. It's Monday. It's just another manic Monday.
It's just another manic Monday. Wish it was Sunday.
Yes, it's Monday, and which means it's motivation day. So I just done a lot of shit that needed to be done around the house, and that was that. How has all your week been? What have you been up to? I have missed you guys. I have been gone for like, what, 3 weeks? Had so much going on. I was planning stuff. Things happened. You know, life gets in the way. But I'm back. I am back for you guys, and I am back with a big one. It was highly requested. You know who you are. My sister Alex was just telling me about this case, and I've heard about it like briefly in the past, but then when she was getting into like detail, I was like completely taken aback. I was like, oh my goodness, okay, this case is crazy. And I was meant to do it last week, and then things just got hectic. So yes, we are going to be getting into the case today, and this case is about Rebecca Marie Watts.
What do I eat first?
I don't know, just have a nice big mouthful of
Why a big?
well, that's a lot of rice.
Right now? It's really hot anyway because of the microwave. I want a drink ready.
No, it's fine.
Dad, dude! I'm taking half of this. Don't red.
Rebecca, also known as Becky, was born on the 8th of June in 1998. She was a British student from Bristol in the UK. I have not known a lot about Bristol. I've actually haven't heard much about it, to be honest, but we are here. Her father, Darren, and her mother, Tanya, did split when she was only 3 years old. So the relationship wasn't getting on, so they did end up divorcing, which, as I said, she's only 3. So that can be, it can be a lot, but at least she was younger than when, you know, when you're older and you're in your teenage years, and if you're dealing with something like divorce and things like that, it can get a bit in the way of your mental state, whereas she was only 3, so it was like she had time to kind of adapt and kind of get used to things. But the one thing that Becky, we're going to call her Becky, the one thing that was quite serious about Becky is that the mental issues that she had. She dealt with anorexia as she was getting older. She dealt with bulimia. She had just a lot of like body dysmorphia problems, which is, I think in a way, every girl has kind of been there, but not to that extreme. So I can only imagine how that would have been for her. She did have a brother, Danny, but he did end up staying with the mother, whereas she stayed with the father. And her father, Darren, did end up remarrying, and he remarried Angie. Angie suffers with a neurological disease. Now, bear with me because I'm really bad with pronouncing things like this.
Multiple sclerosis.
Let's hope I said that correctly. Her stepmother, Angie, did have a son, and her son was named Nathan. Now, Nathan is somewhat of, you know, just the typical stepbrother. Doesn't like you, doesn't really like the fact that you're around his mother. He adored his mum and she adored him, so he was very much a mummy's boy. There's nothing wrong with him. He is some guy, that guy, Nathan. Yeah, some guy. Just a side note as well, Nathan is 12 years older than Becky, so there's a 12-year age gap. Like with me and my siblings, the biggest age gap is 11 years, so I can kind of like sense, I can kind of get a feel for it. So in 2015, Rebecca Marie Watts was 16 at the time, and she did get reported missing by her father. And when I did hear the call that he made to the police, it's just
Even the source of police, how can I help? It appears my daughter's gone missing. No one has seen her, no? No.
So in mid-February, the story hit the news. It went absolutely crazy. Everybody wanted to know about it. There was hashtags, there was stories, there was outlets, you name it, it was there. I think that Rebecca's only 16. She's a 16-year-old girl. She has had, you know, mental issues in the past, like with her eating and her bulimia and her anorexia and all of that, a lot of sensitive, hardcore stuff that people go through. And it's like, if she goes missing, you're going to think, oh, she's 16, you know, she's going to have times where she's going to run off to her families or her friends even. She's going to run off to her friends, she's going to run away, she's going to get pissed off, she's going to get annoyed, and it's what happens. I was 16 and to be fair, I didn't run away. I actually got kicked out once because I was being such a bitch. And the story goes that Becky was actually at a party the night before. So she was just at a party at her friend's house. She stayed over at her friend's house. And then she comes in to her own home and she bumps into Angie. She has little, like, you know, a little chin wag with Angie, and she needs to actually go to a hospital appointment because of her illness. So as she goes to the hospital, Becky is then like alone in the house. But as it kind of continues into the rest of the story changes slightly, which kind of pisses me off, because you know when it's like you're reading a story, you want to kind of get to the gist of it, and there's arms and legs is added on, or there's things missing, and it's just people just not being completely honest, is there? And it's just, it does not help the situation. Becky, as we said, was growing up and she did have a few mental issues, anorexia, bulimia, things that, it's such a sensitive topic because there's so many people out there that kind of deal with these type of things. And all I can say is, like, you know, you're beautiful, you're perfect the way you are. On top of poor Becky dealing with these mental problems, she also was being bullied at the time. So even though she was like dangerously underweight, she was being bullied for being quote unquote fat, obese, chubby. She did have a boyfriend at the time of her going missing. His name was Lucas and he was a trainee mechanic. He was a nice person, the relationship got on really well, and he was unfortunately the last person to hear from Becky besides Angie. He got messages and there's text messages between the two of them going back and forth, and then you can kind of see that he's trying to reach out to her and she's not responding, and that's like a big red flag. If you're messaging somebody and if they're not responding within 24 to 48 hours, and if there's somebody like your boyfriend or girlfriend or your best mate or your sister or whatever, these things happen. She didn't respond. It was been about 24 hours and obviously that's when the call is called in. But at this time and a few days afterwards, Becky's friends are actually calling her father and Angie and her brothers and her stepbrother Nathan, asking about where she is. That's just the biggest red flag I can even think of, is none of her friends know where she is. They're all looking for her. Her parents don't know where she is. Her boyfriend doesn't know where she is. It's just the ultimate fear. As I was saying, that Becky and Angie had a conversation when Angie then went to the hospital. When Angie came back, she was gone for a few hours. But when she came back, Becky was gone. And like I said, she didn't think anything of it. She just disappeared. She just went. And 24 hours later, the father calls the police to report her as missing. Becky's father actually describes Becky as being super shy. And even if she did run away, she doesn't have the courage to even ask for a bus ticket. Another alarming thing is her phone, her laptop, all of those like devices that you would take places with you, they were all gone. They were all gone, along with Becky. And that's like, no money was taken, no jewellery was taken, no important valuables in her room was taken. It was just her, and all of her electronics were just gone. After a few days of Becky being missing and not turning up, no clues, no body being found, no information, it's so sad to even explain how I felt listening to her father, Darren, being on the news and having like a statement, like reaching out and hoping that she can hear him, hoping that there's somebody out there that can hear, that he's desperate to have his daughter, and it is heartbreaking.
She was your typical teenage girl. Lots of selfies, music, fashion.
Becky's father and stepmother told me today that her disappearance is completely out of character, and they are desperate for news.
Bex, if you can see this, get in contact. And if anyone out there knows something, just tell us. Just bring her home safe. If you've got her, then put her somewhere we can find her. We want her home, please.
She's not in trouble. She's just wanted here. We just want her back. That's all we want.
It's just so sad to even think about like how he must have felt. I can't even go through it in my own head. I don't even want to. Like, it's just devastating. So that's when the police then started their interviews. So they then decided to interview Nathan and his girlfriend Shannon. Now, little back bit. We are going to speak about Nathan and Shannon. Nathan was obviously the type of guy that kind of grew up, he was happy, he was like whichever with his mum, and then his mum got married and he was quite unhappy with that, didn't want that, he wanted his mum to himself, whichever. When he met Shannon, he was in his early 20s and she was 14. She was 14 and he was in his early 20s. And there's actually stories of when Nathan showed up to the house before Shannon came onto the case, Shannon, whichever you want to say, how you want to say it. Nathan shows up to the house, to Becky's dad and his mother's house, with 13-year-old girls in the back of his car. And Darren comes to the front of the door and says, like, no, you put those kids home. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Bring those kids home, bring them to their parents. They're 13. You're not meant to have 13-year-olds around. It's just red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag all over this fucking case. And the funny thing is about this whole thing is his girlfriend, Shannon, was actually his mother, Angie's carer. Now, because there's quite an age gap in between the two of them, they do say that Nathan was quite like demanding, quite overpowering of Shannon, but also there's other people saying that Shannon was Shannon. I'm going to keep saying it differently, but you know who I'm talking about. But she's basically quite abusive towards Nathan. Now, I don't know if that's factual or not, but there's a lot of things that go on about that, and it comes up again in between the case. But it's insane. The two of them are clearly unhealthy together and they're quite toxic together. And they decided to involve children. So they have, I think, 2 kids. I'm going to go with 2. But Nathan had a lot of issues of his own. So he didn't actually have a job. Joined the Territorial Army, which is like a weekend warrior, so to speak. So he was at that, and that's kind of what he stayed with for a while. And like I said, Shannon was Angie's carer. So they both had jobs. It's just they were very messy. It was just very messy. So as we get in a little bit further into the investigation and the interviews from the police, they do end up asking Angie and interviewing Angie.
Shauna heard the door go. So she was assuming it was Becky going out.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it was Becky going out.
Okay. No one saw her go, but
No.
just heard the door go,
Yeah.
and the assumption that Becky had left.
Yeah.
the house.
And there was a little porky in her statement when she said that she left Becky in the house on her own. That's not correct, because when she left, Becky was in the house and so was Nathan and Shannon. So Nathan and Shannon are both in the house. When they then interview Shannon, Shannon then turns around and says, no, she was here. I heard the door slam and I know it was her because Nathan was here. I mean, the interview doesn't even make sense. Her face, it makes my blood boil. It makes my blood boil. But yeah, the interview is something else.
I think we got there about 11ish. The door was locked, so obviously we used a key from underneath the recycling bin. Got in. Heard music upstairs. Assumed Becky had been in then. I went into the kitchen to get a cigarette. I went to go outside to have a cigarette. My daughter started whinging because she wanted to come out with me, so I took her down to the garden to help feed the rabbit while I had a cigarette. Probably was about 15-20 minutes. Then we came back up. I went into the kitchen to get a drink. I think I was washing my hands. Then I heard the front door slam. Carried on washing my hands, went into the living room. And then I think it wasn't until a lot later on that Angie asked me if Becky had gone out. And I said, yeah, I heard the door go. She must have gone out earlier. Really kind of like, oh, what was that? It was just the door, so Becky would have gone out.
Yeah.
Instead of Angie being the last person to hear or see of Becky, it was actually Nathan and Shannon to hear her, so to speak, because they technically didn't see her in their statement. Like I said, it's too suspicious. It's too suspicious for my liking. I was listening to the interviews and watching the interviews, and believe me, there's so much footage on these two. It's just, there's so much to get through. So There's actually footage of her sitting there, and like I said, it boils my blood like you've seen. And all I can say is, yeah, I don't even have words for it. Another big red flag, boom. Nathan was literally avoiding the police like the plague. He didn't want anything to do with the police. He was hiding from the police. He didn't want he didn't want an argument with the police. He didn't want an interview with the police. Blah, 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 blah. He wanted nothing to do with the police until they got their hands on him. Which is actually quite crazy, because they actually mention it to Shanann in her second interview.
I think some of our colleagues were trying to speak to Nathan, just part of those initial inquiries just a few days ago, on Tuesday, I think it was. And they sort of perceived a bit of reluctance. Do you have any knowledge of that?
Not to my knowledge, but I wouldn't know, no.
No. Has Nathan had any sort of concerns about speaking to us?
Not that he's told me, no.
No.
If he does, I wouldn't know though.
Yeah. How is he finding it?
He's found it quite hard, actually. Again, he's kind of more thinking, my God, if it was... Or again, knowing how hard it'd be for his mum at the moment. You know, because Becky was almost like her daughter.
Like I said, she looks like she's having a ball. Makes me sick. Makes me sick! When they got to Nathan, my skin fucking crawled. He even admits that he doesn't like her. He admits he doesn't like Becky. He admits that he didn't get on with her. He even says that she spoke to his mother like shit and he didn't enjoy it, and, you know, she was just a bitch. She was a bitch. I'm like, she's missing. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ! She's missing. After they interviewed Nathan, they did end up thinking, you know, suspicious, too much. There's something funny going on here. And then they deep dived into the investigation, went straight to their house where Becky was last seen, and they found evidence. They found clear as day evidence. They found Becky's blood on the door frame of her bedroom. And whose fingerprint was in it? Nathan's. It's like a week after she supposedly went missing, and it's just, there's too many things adding up. He's avoiding the police, Shanann's having a great time with the police, and now there's a fingerprint with Becky's blood. It's just mind blown. Becky's prints were also found at the scene, obviously, as her room, etc. But I mean, like, by the blood and things like that. So it was clear as day. Nathan and Shanann got arrested. Hallelujah. They got arrested nice and quick. A week afterwards, boom, boom, nice and done. Nice and easy. Good work. They were arrested for kidnapping, and the reason why they were arrested for kidnapping is because there was still no body found yet. But before the body was found, they can't really, you know, say that it's murder. There's no confession, there's no evidence, there's no body, there's just blood and there's a child missing. So they got arrested for kidnapping. After the arrest, they then interview Nathan again. And this is when they get a little bit more information from him. And it's just, I mean, he's just fucking horrible. It's just mean, it's not nice, it's nasty.
So how would you describe your relationship with Becky?
Don't particularly talk to her, but obviously I don't particularly like her. And obviously what annoys me is the way she speaks to, like, my mum sometimes. She'd be kind of like rude or whatever. I'm trying to think of an actual specific time.
Like, why? When the police searched Nathan and Shannon's home, and when they searched Nathan and Shannon's home, it was a tip. Messy. Shit everywhere. It was a fucking pigsty. It was so messy. I mean, they've got two kids. And it's just a bomb. And the one thing that stood out is there's one area inside that room that was immaculate. And I mean immaculate. Bleach. It was gleaming. And guess where it was? The bath. Yep. So clean. There was no issues there, you know, no dirt, perfectly clean. But everywhere around it was just an absolute shithole. Suspicious arseholes. They also found receipts from a home store where they actually get footage of Nathan buying a circular saw, masks and gloves. then what they done was they arrested Nathan for suspicion of murder, which is like, thank God. But these police, I've heard so many different stories, obviously, because of what I do. But I've heard like so much information about like different police in different states and countries and whichever. But all I can say is here they were like they were on it, like a car bonnet. And they then, Nathan and Shannon, more Nathan than anything, make somewhat of a confession. You listen, you watch it, and you can see what you think. But yeah, somewhat of a confession, because to me,
Kidnap's concerned, you are not aware that Nathan was planning to do that on that day. Okay. How do I know that you weren't involved?
Again, I shouldn't have any DNA reason to be involved, and again, the fact that, as far as I knew, he was, changing, he wasn't as violent anymore. And, he was going to sort the house out, and we were talking about, I'm carrying his children. I didn't... To think that I would know. Sorry.
No. Take a moment, that's right. Because I suppose the thing is, from someone outside looking in, is that what he's saying is he's gone to the address with an intent to kidnap her.
Okay.
And it's been quite convenient that you're at the garden having a cigarette and he's doing what he's doing.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
And someone might say, well, hold on a minute, she'd let her know.
Yeah.
There's no way he could do that, or take those items, take some stuff with him, and the intent to go there without you knowing. Do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to make,
Again, the car, I didn't see anything in the car. Again, like I was saying to my solicitor, I didn't look in the boot. I wouldn't look in the boot. It would be more unusual for me to look in the boot.
At any time, were you concerned about leaving him on his own in the house with Becky?
No.
What you've got to do is prove that you're not involved in this.
Yes.
So when I'm asking you these questions, always bear that in mind, because that's what you need to do now.
Okay.
Okay? Because at this moment in time, we've still got this position where you are you are in the house, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so if there's anything at all that's going to help you, you must tell us now. Anything at all.
I developed an idea to scare Rebecca by kidnapping her. I wanted to scare her and teach her a lesson. I believed that she was selfish and her behaviour towards my mother was a risk to her health. A few minutes after arriving, Shauna said she wanted a cigarette and went into the garden. I went to the boot of my car, took out a bag that contained the items, then went upstairs to the landing before knocking on Rebecca's door. She replied, "What?" or "Hello," and I said, "Can I see you a minute?" I cannot be sure which order things happened, but I used the items I had to subdue Rebecca. During the short struggle, my mask slipped and Rebecca was able to see my face. This caused me to panic, and I strangled her while she was partially in the bag.
So what happened? What happened to Rebecca Marie Watts, and what did these nasty, horrible duo do to this poor girl? Well, buckle in, because we're going to tell you. So before I get into it too much about what happened to Becky, I just want to make a statement of Nathan and Shannon were, there's no way of actually like putting this in a nice way, to be honest. They were paedophiles. Yep, can't even believe that came out of my mouth. They were paedophiles. And you know why they were paedophiles? Text messages. They were making plans to pick up 13-year-old girls, 14-year-old girls, whatever, and to make them, I don't even know if I want to say this, to be honest, their sexual playthings. Months and months of messages about kidnapping kids, about wanting to take them, about seeing this kid and wanting to just grab them. It's like, There's an actual interview where they're questioning Shauna and they're like finding all of these messages what Shauna's saying, and it's just vile. It's just vile.
Just went to cost cutters and saw a very, in big caps, pretty petite girl. Almost knocked her out to bring her home. LOL.
So when it came to the 18th of February, which is the day that all of the shite that shouldn't have happened, Nathan went to Becky's parents' house. So Angie and Darren's house where Becky was staying. Angie obviously wasn't in. Shannon was clearly there too. And he goes up to Shannon's room and he strangles her and he kills her and he stabs her 15 times. 15 times. He then put her in the boot of their car and just left her there. Like left her there until like, you know, they had time. Just left her in the boot. Oh my God. And then they take her back to their house, put her in the bathtub and dismember her body. They just cut her up. They just take her arms off, her legs off. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ!
It's just awful. She's 16. She is 16. She's a baby. And she's being cut up in a fucking bathtub because of your freaking ugly perversions. Ugh. Like I said, they did say that Nathan was quite abusive to Shauna. Like he would strangle her and punch her and all of that kind of stuff. But there's also resources where they're saying to Shannon, I keep saying it differently, but I'm going to keep going, that she also done the same thing to Nathan. So they were very toxic. They were a very unhealthy relationship. And I mean, that's just to say it lightly, really, if you think about it, because of what they'd done. But it's just red flags everywhere. Yes, they just had a lot in common. Yeah, to say the least. A quick side note, as I've just realised that I have been pronouncing Shannon, name wrong the entire time, because that's not her name. Her name is Shauna. So yeah, I just wanted to apologise for that, because that's my fault and I made a mistake. And in my notes, there's Shannon, Shannon, Shauna. There's so many different ones. So I was like, what was going on inside my head when I was doing that? But yeah, that's my little side note. I do apologise, but her name isn't Shannon or Shannon. Her name is Shauna. And awfully enough, her name is Shauna Whore. This is how you spell it. Whore. And I mean, I can say it because it's her surname. I'm not meaning anything by it. But yeah, my apologies. Anyway, back to the story. Shauna, in this case, is in the interview and she's still unknowing, not sure, didn't know that happened, didn't have a clue he was like that. Oh my God, if I knew that it would have been a different story. So she is unknowing through this whole case afterwards, especially when, you know, Nathan admits it. She's so full of it. Regardless, the trial then begins in October 2015. Nathan obviously pleaded guilty, as he did have a confession. Shauna said she had nothing to do with it. She wasn't aware that this was going on. It's just she was in the house. And also her fingerprints were also found at the scene, but they found that later on. So she was there. No, sorry. Shauna's prints were found on the bags that the body parts were held in. Yep. Because they found them. They found them in their shed. So in Nathan and Shauna's shed out the back garden, they found all of the body parts. And it's like her fingerprints are all over them. So she's got the proof. They've all got the proof. So she can't deny it. And she's like, I'm completely unknown of it. But I mean, that poor girl. They also have all of these, you know, paedophilic messages and intentions and all of this evidence that just makes them, you know, sick as fuck. So it's kind of like, you know, they're guilty regardless. They're guilty regardless. Yes, they're guilty of the murder, but they're guilty of a lot of other things too. In her interview, Shauna, she actually turns around and she says that when she was having the discussion with Nathan about these little girls, like through text and stuff like that, she states she was being sarcastic. It was just a bit of sarcasm. You know, it's just being sarcastic. Oh, you want to nab a kid and make it your sexual plaything. It's just being sarcastic. Okay, great. That's hilarious. Not funny. Not sarcasm. You're a creep. So they had a 5-week trial, and 3.5 hours after the deliberation, they were both found guilty. Nathan was found guilty of murder and Shauna was found guilty of manslaughter. Nathan got life, so 33 years I think is like the least he gets, and then Shauna gets 17 years. Their appeals were denied afterwards. They were denied, which is good, you know, good riddance. You deserve to be in prison for the rest of your lives suffering, but you know, we move. That's that story, and they're in prison. Something that I should have said. Nathan, when he was in prison, or when he is in prison, because he still is, in prison, he does not have a happy time. He's not enjoying it. No, he's not happy. He was attacked with boiling butter. And there's a such... Oh, it's just mental. Becky's father, Darren, comes out and says that that was the best birthday present he could have ever received, because it happened around his birthday, that Nathan got attacked with boiling butter. And I'm like, I mean, does he deserve it? Deserved a lot more than that. Should have got it every day. That does bring us to the end of our story today, and it's hardcore, isn't it? It's brutal, but it's the father gets me the most in it. I think it's because he's obviously done like the appeals and like shouting out and looking for help and things like that, and it's just fucking heartbreaking. My father's name is Darren. So when I was actually watching it, and when Darren kept coming into it and it was like, Darren was upset, Darren was this, I was like, oh my God. It just brings it a little bit more into perspective, as if it was actually like, you know, me or one of my siblings. It's just awful. But they're both in prison and they're both suffering, and all I can say is that the parents of Becky Marie Watts and her stepmother and her biological full brother, not stepbrother, are just all devastated. They're left without a beautiful, bright young girl that had so much ahead of her, and my thought goes out to all the family. We do have to be very careful with what we come out with, and you know, saying these kind of stories is not an easy way to say things. And yeah, I have a joke here and there, but that's just my personality, and I just kind of want you to know, like, be careful. You know, these people are real. These aren't fake stories. These are real stories, and these people do exist. And they can read comments if they needed to, they can. So please be generous and careful and quite mindful in the comments, just in case, you know, they could see it. And if they did, it could be very hurtful. So just please be very careful. That is it for now. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. It's nice to be back. It's nice to be back here in front of the camera. And yeah, hope you all have a great rest of your week. And I will see you on the other side. Don't forget to subscribe and to look at my extra socials, because I'm here for you all the time. I promise I'll be here more. I do. I promise. But I wish you all a great weekend, and I will see you soon. But for now, be safe. Bye.